Talk about a lady who really started life in an interesting way. I was taken by her start in Oklahoma. And one of the things that really stands out to me is this is a lady who had dreams that she never lost sight of, even though there were a lot of turns in the road. Talk a little bit about that.
Right. From the very start, I talk about how as a little girl in second grade, she decided she wanted to be a teacher. And this is back in the late 1950s when women weren't really being encouraged to go into careers, even teaching, as far as her mother, Pauline, was concerned. So her mom never really nurtured that dream of her that she started out having as a little girl. But Elizabeth never let go of that dream all through junior high and high school and went to college with that dream. And her mother never caught on to it, actually really opposed it the whole time, saying that girls should be getting ready to become wives and mothers, and that's it. So that was the first roadblock.
When you look at the perception that women had at that particular time, speaking of her mother, and I get it through the whole book, that her mother really never thought that she should really go beyond just wanting to be a mom, right? I mean, that should be enough. And yet she harbored dreams of, being a lawyer or being a teacher, most of all, during her lifetime, and ultimately became a senator as well, and some other jobs in between. So her mother really was never really supportive based on that perception at an early age.
That's right. I mean, we're all a product of our time, right? And I think a lot of young women back in the mid-'60s when she graduated from high school, they were getting these conflicting messages. There was the very start of the women's movement, but it was also still very much a 1950s-inspired era. And so women might start to aspire to careers and thinking about what they could do in society, but at the same time there was this really strong push from society in general and families to be the supporter of to make your husband more successful. You go to college so that you can be a really great supportive wife for your husband. So Elizabeth definitely tackled with those two very opposing messages. And when she went to college, she went for 2 years, but then when her high school sweetheart asked her to marry him, she said yes, and she quit college and went the other way with those two conflicting sides of what life was telling her to do. So a lot of women can relate to that from that generation, definitely.
And got married at the age of 19, and then through a number of things, had 2 children, and did what all moms do, and yet at the same time still harbored those dreams and went to college, got a big job on Wall Street eventually, became the teacher she wanted to become, and eventually taught at Harvard as well. So, I mean, she certainly never lost sight of the dreams, even though she was still trying to make sure that, motherhood was important too.
Exactly. She did both, and she loved raising her children, but she knew in the back of her mind that there was more that was open to her with her life, regardless of what all the other messages were. She really wanted to do something productive in the world and in society. Raising children is, of course, very important and very nurturing and very fulfilling. But for her, she was one of those women who felt that there was more that she's here for, and so she held on to it, like you say.
I wanted to ask you a little bit, too, about, I had visions, by the way, as I was reading this book, of seeing she and Senator Cruz in a true debate. Both of them were known as unbelievable debaters. I know she was in that the whole way through college, and I have this vision of, a debating society led by her and Ted Cruz. That would be a wonderful thing to see, wouldn't it?
It sure would. That'd be real debate. Trained debaters.
Exactly.
Who have known their stuff since, she started debating when she was only 13 years old. She got into high school very young because she skipped some school, and a good student. So she has been an expert at this for a long time, and I think we're all kind of hungry for some real policy-type, streamlined, thoughtful debate.
Well, I'd love to hear some people debate that it makes some sense to us. I think that's what we're all looking for right now. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the policy. One of the lines in there that you wrote in your book, Antonia, quote, this was attributed to Senator Warren, "There is nobody who got rich in this country on their own. Nobody. Part of the underlying contract is you take a hunk of that and pay it forward for the next kid who comes along." That's not without controversy, obviously. There are a lot of people who feel that, you can make money in this country, that you're not necessarily obliged to give back, although most people do give back on their own. But she does kind of touch on the idea here that government should somehow be involved in that. And again, that is a controversial kind of look.
It is. And, you know, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that was a speech that went viral during her campaign in 2011. That speech just went crazy because somebody posted it on YouTube. And she's kept to that idea, and of course others have written about this idea too. But just last week, she came out with her Accountable Capitalism Act.
Right.
And it's really harking back to that idea that there needs to be a social contract to make capitalism really work for everybody. So
the problem that you get into there,
yeah,
the Public Integrity Act, and she also had the Anti-Corruption Act, which I thought was pretty good about senators and presidents and former congressmen not being able to be lobbyists for a lifetime. But the Public Integrity Act, I think the problem that we have there when we look at that, and a lot of people will see that in the book, I guess, is the idea that government somehow tells a corporate head then how they're going to have to make decisions by bringing other people into the boardroom and that kind of thing. And there's some numbers involved in that as well.
Right. And exactly. Yeah, that's exactly. And of course, that's going to be a controversial idea with a lot of folks.
One final question, the Indian thing. Obviously there are a lot of people, that was a controversial thing. She put that on some applications, I guess, or put down later on she marked in Native American. Quick explanation of that, because you give an explanation of that in the book, and she talks about what that really meant.
Right. Well, she did not actually use that on any applications to get into college or to get any kind of a job. The only time she ever mentioned it was in a directory of law professors as a sort of a social thing, hoping that she could perhaps connect with other Native American people of Native American heritage in her work. But it became really verified that she never used this for any kind of advancement as a student or as a teacher, any way professionally. And, of course, it was brought up in her first campaign, and she has tried to quell that, but I'm sure it's going to be coming up a lot more. She stays with her story that growing up in her family, the big story was that her parents had to elope because her father's side of the family did not want Don Herring, her dad, to marry a woman who had Native American ancestry, who was partly Native American. So that was the big story in her family, and she didn't feel that she should say no, just turn her back on that because somebody was trying to say that she used this minority status to get ahead. That's basically the story.
Antonia, unfortunately, we've run out of time this morning, but the name of the book is Elizabeth Warren, Her Fight, Her Work, Her Life. New York Times bestselling author Antonia Felix with us this morning. Antonia, thank you so very much.
Gary, it's great to talk to you. Thank you.